Great. So welcome to OCG's 4th episode of Checking In with OCG. In this series, I'll be hosting OCG staff members to chat about the latest and greatest happenings going on within the world of sponsored project administration. Today, we have Compliance Officer Penny Matthews and Deputy Director Pam here to give us a peek into sponsored project property. So for the first 20 minutes, I'll be asking Penny and Pam some questions I've prepared. And then for the last 10 minutes, I'll open it up to questions from y'all, the audience. So questions come up during the interview, hold on to them. We've carved out some time just for you. All right, so Penny, Pam, we're gonna dive right in. To start, let's talk about OCG's role in managing sponsored project property. So can you tell me the difference between the Property Accounting Office, which is within CCO, and then what we do for sponsored project property?
Sure. You want me to take the first stab at that?
Yeah.
Okay. So the PAO, which is Property Accounting Office, really oversees maintaining the official record of all property on campus. And it's in a system called PSAM. And I know they do a lot to maintain that. They do biennial inventories and things of that nature. They also, for OCG, issue tags and print the tags that are for the property that we manage, which is equipment that is government or sponsor titled. We also manage the conditionally titled equipment as well. So what that means for OCG is that we correspond with sponsors and departments and manage and oversee the tagging, reporting, asking for title at the end of the award, which is disposition. Let's see, as far as both of us working together, PAO and OCG, both review fabrication request forms. We go over disposal requests and any type of transfer that might be to another award or a PI leaving, something like that. Did I forget anything, Pam?
That office also does all the debt and asset management, which is not something that we actually touch, but yeah, we collaborate with them on fabrication requests and many other items. And as Penny said, they print all the tags, only some of which OCG is responsible for.
Wow, okay, so Property Accounting Office versus what OCG does in their property duties. Isn't that outlined somewhere on our website? We have a page where it talks about the things that we do and then when PAO gets involved. I know we have it and I'm gonna find it for you guys and I'm gonna add it to my follow-up on this because yeah, I think sometimes it can be hard to distinguish between property accounting versus OCG property. So thanks for clarifying.
I would agree. It is kind of hard to keep the roles separate or know who does what. But I think that the key for OCG is just knowing that anything that has a sponsor interest, we are going to be involved in looking at terms and conditions and how the equipment's titled, how it should be reported on, things like that. So PAO, while they oversee all of the equipment, they anything with any sponsor tie or interest comes to us.
Great.
And both of the manuals, both PAO's manual and OCG's property manual are on the website. And there is a section in the OCG manual that really articulates all the responsibilities of all the different parties involved with sponsor titled property.
Great, yeah. All right, so if any of you want some extracurricular learning, go ahead and read those manuals. I'm sure they're both very intriguing. So kind of moving on, I know right before COVID took us all remote, you two were quite busy tackling the property following the departure of our previous property specialist, Tao Suda. So what were some of the immediate needs that needed to be met during that transition?
Well, to begin, it's a very small team. So the property role in itself, I was really known by Tao and somewhat by Pat, both of whom left, and then COVID came up. So really it was kind of a time to do a lot of figuring out of what we needed to do, just basic functions and how to do those things. So well, I had the basics from Tao, and of course the history that she left as far as any documentation that I could find on specific pieces of equipment or awards. It really took a lot of research, or continued research. I mean, there's a lot to learn every day about property. So the thing about that is that there's really no one to ask, since she was kind of the main person in property. So Pam and I, are thought partners on a lot of this stuff, and reach out to DRAs and property managers on campus, and that's been really, really helpful. I'm grateful for those opportunities.
Great, yeah, that I cannot even imagine having to tackle that. And I think a lot of that really taught OCG that we need to make sure we're spreading our knowledge.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
All right, well, so you both have really taken this opportunity to move our sponsored property business processes into totally new territory. So can you tell us about the decision to move government-sponsored property tracking to InfoEd? And how has this benefited your work and our campus stakeholders?
For the move into InfoEd, it really, for us and campus partners, it means that the documents and the data is all centralized in one place. So the way I see it, property is growing every day. We have more and more stuff to manage. And while the previous system was basically a spreadsheet keeping track of all the sponsor titled equipment, and it was crashed eventually, it was just loaded with information and not a safe place. So it just made sense that while that system worked at one point, it made sense to move it into more of a centralized place like InfoEd.
And it allows for transparency of all that information to each of the departments that has that, has sponsor titled property. And it also allows, Penny, I don't know if you already said this, my internet is a little funky today, for reporting, so that we can now run reports and have much easier access to, transactions that need to happen.
Yeah, and to piggyback on that also, it also helps us keep track of equipment status. So I mentioned dispositions earlier, where if title moves from government or sponsor title to being granted to CU at the end of the award, then we can change that status in InfoEd, so all of the campus partners can see that. Also for inventories or audits that come up, it's just a better way to pull data that might be useful in getting each of those tasks done.
Yeah, thanks for sharing. And for those of you guys who are interested in learning more about how to find those statuses about property on InfoEd, we do have a video for that and a training in our InfoEd training e-course, which I will post that link. For those of you who are already part of the OCG Canvas course, it's in there. So if you want to learn more about that new functionality, it's all there for you guys. So kind of shifting topics, I understand you handle bailment agreements, which was a totally new word for me. What are bailment agreements and why are they important to research on campus?
So bailments, which are also in InfoEd, by the way, anyone that has any in their department or needs to access the active agreement, it's there. It's basically a loan of equipment. So it can be incoming to our campus or outgoing. And it's equipment that is otherwise maybe unavailable to the research. So it really facilitates a deeper dive into the science, and also collaborations. So not only with people on campus, but equipment is loaned out to other researchers across the world. So it's a great opportunity really to share equipment that just may not be available to grad students, other PIs, industry partners, a lot of people that ordinarily would not get that.
And some of the bailment agreements that we enter into require, for example, review by export control. And we've had some really interesting cases. I didn't realize that we would be loaned or might loan out drones. Who knew?
Mm-hmm.
Something different.
There's also having an active agreement is really important if it just formalizes the loan per se, so that we know everyone's on the same page, we know how it's titled and who it belongs to, when it's returning to campus or when we have to return it. And also, Pam mentioned drones, there's liability associated with that kind of stuff. So the active bailment agreement takes care of insurance, basically.
Got it. So bailment equals loaning. That's
Yep.
kind of what I've put together in my head. So if we're in a bailment agreement, we're either the institution loaning out the equipment or we're loaning it from another institution.
Exactly.
Got it. Always helpful to really simplify that. All right, so before we close my portion of this session, could you each share what is the biggest surprise or eye-opener that you had taking on the OCG property role?
For me, I guess I really had no idea how complex property can be, and not just for myself and OCG, but really for everyone on campus, the property managers, DRAs. There's so many parts to the property process that I really had no idea. I kind of joke that property seemed really straightforward from a distance, but once you get up in it, it can be pretty intricate or complex.
Yeah, I would agree. There's a lot more moving parts to it than I really understood before. I think the other surprise for me was I didn't understand how many entities we would be working with. So one example is that some of our federal sponsors hand over administration of awards to the Office of Naval Research. So when an award is ONR administered, then we are interacting not only with our NASA, let's say if it's a NASA award, our NASA counterpart, we are also accountable to our the person who's overseeing that through ONR. So lots of people involved. So that was kind of a surprise.
Also, it takes, with the sponsor involved, especially in different things that I have to request for them, the response time can be quite a long time. And so that kind of puts maybe the departments here on campus kind of in a pinch about, what, can I dispose of this thing yet? Or it's been sitting here, or if it's titled to CU yet. It can take quite a while for the sponsor to get back to us with a definitive answer on that. So that was a surprise to me, that it can take upward of a year sometimes with some sponsors.
Wow, that is a long time.
Yeah. Yeah, not just a month, but it can take months and months and months.
Yeah, and I think that's good for all of us to know, especially those working directly with PIs, so out in the departments. So it's not a surprise if this process takes a long time, like everything else, it seems.
Yeah, Yeah, though with COVID, I'd have to say that I found that the response time, I don't know if it's people working from home more and everything, but response time has been a little bit faster. So if there's, you know, an upside for collaboration during this strange time, it's I've found that people through email or Zoom calls and such are much more available. So
Great.
yeah.
We were really surprised this year at how quickly we received approval. We went through an ONR desk audit this year, and we submit a lot of materials for that. And we received approval in, I think, record time, within like a month or so of submitting all this stuff. And it's usually, as Penny said, it could be up to a year before you really know if you pass muster.
Mhm.
I guess tiny silver lining there.
Yeah.
So this ends my questions for this session, but now I'm going to open it up to our audience here, and we already have a question or two in the chat, so I'll start with those. And then if any of you have questions that you're thinking of now or as we're talking, feel free to either post them in the chat, or if there's a moment, to unmute yourself and just ask the question directly. So we're going to start from a question from Alan Dale. Is there a PAO manual that's separate from the OCG sponsored project manual?
Yes, there is. Both of which there are links to on the OCG property site. And I believe PAO's website or webpage also links to both of them.
Great, thanks, Pam. And we'll post that link in a minute here. So next question, this one's from Mandy. If it's government titled equipment, bail agreement between two institutions needs sponsor prior approval?
It depends on the equipment that's being bailed, that's loaned. I would have to look and see how it's titled, if it's CU titled versus sponsor, and just the specific terms and conditions. You know, I think that each award is a little unique, and so or a lot unique in a lot of cases. So we really just have to kind of identify those terms and conditions and see if we need to reach out to the sponsor or not. It hasn't been, I haven't done bailments for a long time yet, but it seems that most of the equipment being bailed does not have a sponsor tie to it, but that doesn't mean that it never happens.
And I think the restriction that we'd be looking for there is if there's a piece of property that is government titled and the terms and conditions specifically state that it is for use on that project, the project
Right.
on which it was purchased, then yes, we would have to get permission if by bailing it, it was going to be used on other projects or for other, you know, reasons.
And sometimes the equipment is, when it's incoming to CU, it's from an industry partner. And so they can have quite a few stipulations as well. So there's quite a bit of negotiating that goes on. So.
Great, thanks for sharing. Our next question comes from Lauren. In this remote environment, are bailment agreements able to be executed for equipment kept off the campus? It's in the chat if you need to read it.
Can you read it again, Nikki?
Sure.
Yeah.
In this remote environment, are bailment agreements able to be executed for equipment kept off the campus?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. If I understand the question correctly, it's all through email and DocuSign and things like that. So most of the negotiation and drafting of the bailment agreement is done electronically. So yes, to answer your question, in the remote setting, we can do that, but somebody obviously has to have access and be able to figure out the logistics for shipping of the equipment. So, you know, those things can be restricted in this time too. So there are those details that would have to be worked out with both parties. I hope that answers your question.
I think, well, I think, yes, it can be executed off campus, but for the equipment that's located off campus.
Yeah, yeah.
Yes, okay.
Again, it's all about the logistics, which usually fall to the department.
Yeah.
As to, can somebody get access to it and can you ship it? Or can you receive shipment from something that's coming from off campus?
Got it. Great. Any more questions out there? I don't have any other ones in the chat. So if you want to unmute yourself, you can go ahead and ask the question directly or post it in chat. We still have about 10 minutes, so we have plenty of time.
If you can't think of any questions now too, you can always email ocgproperty@colorado.edu anytime.
Yeah, I will say for me, one of the things that took me the longest to understand about property was that property is not just like capital equipment. Like I didn't realize all those smaller things are actually property as well. So that was something that it took a while for it to click, because I just always thought it was those big, giant, expensive things that qualified as property.
Yeah, and it's interesting that occasionally we get an award that has a property term that requires us, when we're doing our annual reporting, which is going on right now, to actually come up with a list of what we would consider to be materials and supplies. So some of the reporting can be a little onerous.
So we did get a question. Is there a type of property training or program or certification for departments?
There is a training program that typically it's organized by PAO, and it's a 3-part training. I don't know, I think they do it annually. Of course, now we haven't been doing it because of our current status and being remote. But as I recall, OCG was part of that training, I think in like the 3rd session.
Mm-hmm.
So there is that. And I believe that there's a description of that on PAO's website.
Yeah, I know that I want to say even last November is when they did it.
I think that's right.
I think this year they might still be trying to figure out how they're going to host that, not in person.
Yeah.
So stay tuned, friends. All right, so another question. Can you comment on the OCG property communication process with departments? For example, DPCR reports at the end of an award?
Yeah, I typically, if a DCPR is required, I send that through to the department through DocuSign. I'm kind of in the process now of learning, who the best contact is, or the correct person to route that to. So you'll have to be patient with me too, or send it back to me and say, this doesn't belong to me, but so-and-so can take care of this. And emailing as well to OCG Property is the best way to communicate that. But I typically watch, specifically for the DCPR form, I watch when that is due and send it out via DocuSign.
Yeah, and I think this is a good spot to just reiterate that for any departments that have, who change, and there's a new staff member or different staff member who's taking an active role in the property management for the department, it would be great if you would email that personnel change to the OCG property box, so that Penny in her communications can get the message to the right person the first time.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that would be super helpful.
I've learned that through the tagging process and departments and seeing who has access to the labs right now and to the actual property that needs the tag. So it's been kind of a networking process now of reaching out to who I do know and saying, do you know who manages, such and such PI's lab? And so it's been great being able to ask the people that I am familiar with and have created a relationship with on campus. But if you know that that's something, a form or something is coming up due that you need, then just go ahead and shoot me an email and I'll get it right out to you.
Great. Any other questions for Penny and Pam? Otherwise, we can wrap up a few minutes early. So I think in summary, when you think property, think Penny. So do contact Penny. She is all things property and she's been doing an excellent job. And thanks for stepping in that role and totally taking on this like mountain of work. It's been really great to have you.
Thank you. Yeah, I learn something new every day, which I love. So I'm definitely up to the challenge and am enjoying it a lot.
Nonstop, action-packed, and fun-filled.
Yes, that's research administration for you guys. All right, well, thank you for doing this for us. And thanks for coming and giving your well thought out questions. Again, we will be posting this session to the training page. So if you had a colleague who missed it and wants to see it, it will be on there. All right, I'm gonna end it then. I'll see you guys next time. Bye.
Bye.